Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really central to our food system, front-of-package food labeling.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
Especially for those of you studying food engineering, we know lots of you tune in, really getting how consumers interact with food information, well, it's critical, isn't it?
Absolutely. And front-of-package labeling, or FOPL as it's often called, is a perfect example of how information itself can be a lever within the whole agri-food system.
A lever? How so?
Well, particularly when we think about public health outcomes, our mission today is really to explore that impact.
Right.
And, there's this growing interest worldwide in using labels not just for nutrition, but to highlight the wider consequences of our food choices. Think about non-communicable diseases, NCDs, for instance.
Right, making those often invisible sort of hidden costs much more obvious to people right there on the shelf.
Exactly. It's about bringing those costs out into the open.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. We often talk about consumers having significant power in the food industry. I mean, their buying decisions, they really shake things, don't they?
Oh, definitely. Consumers are a major force. And shifts in what people eat, those dietary patterns, they're fundamental if we want to tackle these big health challenges.
So what kind of shifts are we talking about?
Well, broadly, we need to see more of the good stuff, fruits, whole grains, and less sodium, for example.
Okay.
And certainly in more industrialized food systems, there's a big focus, too, on cutting back on highly processed foods and maybe red meat consumption as well.
Right.
So any interventions like labeling that build up consumer agency, help people make informed choices and maybe shape their preferences, these can really push the entire food chain towards being healthier and ideally more sustainable, too.
Okay, so that brings us back to the labels themselves, these little symbols or scores on the front of the pack. How do they actually fit into this bigger picture of shifting diets?
So think of front-of-package labels as information tools, quick guides, really. They're designed specifically to inform consumers right at the moment they might buy something.
Okay.
And they can cover various things, obviously nutritional content like sugar or fat levels, but potentially also environmental footprint or ethical sourcing, things like that. The main goal is to provide clear, accessible information to help address those hidden costs we mentioned.
And it's not just about influencing one shopping trip, is it? It seems like it needs to be more consistent than that.
Precisely. It's really a cumulative effect. The more credible these labels are and the more familiar people become with them, well, the greater their potential influence on buying habits over time.
Okay, so credibility and familiarity are key.
Yes, and this is where governments often step in. Many countries are actively promoting certain labeling schemes to nudge consumers towards healthier or more sustainable options.
Are there examples of this working?
Yeah, definitely. There was an interesting study, for example, looking at carbon labels on menus in cafeterias. It found that just seeing that information repeatedly, day after day, actually started to shift what people chose to buy.
Huh, that is interesting, just the repeated exposure.
It shows the power of consistent, easily accessible information. It sort of seeps in.
Okay, now this seems like a good point to talk about Chile. Because their approach from 2016, it feels like a really major example of government intervention using labeling, those black octagons, right?
Exactly. Chile's policy was quite comprehensive and, frankly, pretty bold. They mandated these very stark black stop sign-like octagon warning labels right on the front of packages.
And what triggered a warning?
They were required for foods high in calories, total sugars, saturated fats, or sodium. Any one of those could trigger the label.
Wow, okay. Just a clear warning.
Yes, but they didn't stop there. The policy also included restrictions on marketing these high-end foods to children under 14. And importantly, it banned the sale or even free distribution of these products in schools.
That's a multi-pronged approach then. Labeling, marketing restrictions, school environment changes.
Exactly. It was a package deal, aiming for impact across different areas of influence.
So the million-dollar question, did it work? What impact did it actually have on the ground?
Well, studies looking at purchasing data do indicate a noticeable decrease in household purchases of products that carried these black warning labels. So people bought less of the high-end stuff.
That sounds positive.
It generally is seen as positive, yes. But there's a nuance. Some research also suggested that some consumers sort of shifted their purchases towards products that didn't have labels, which weren't necessarily healthier overall.
Okay. So maybe they avoided the warning but didn't necessarily pick a truly healthier alternative.
Potentially. It highlights that labeling, while powerful, might need to be supported by broader consumer education, helping people understand nutritional information more generally, not just relying on the absence of a warning label.
That makes sense. So labels are a really important piece, a key tool in the toolbox. But maybe they work best when they're not the only tool being used.
Exactly right. The effectiveness of front-of-package labeling seems to be significantly amplified when it's combined with other public health levers.
Like what?
Think about fiscal measures. Taxes on less healthy options, like sugar-sweetened beverages, for example. We've seen those implemented in over 100 countries now.
And do those taxes work?
Generally, yes. The evidence suggests they usually lead to decreased sales of those taxed beverages. Interestingly, the impact is often larger in lower-income households, which can be a positive public health outcome, although equity considerations are important. Plus, the taxes themselves might raise awareness.
Okay, taxes on unhealthy stuff. What about the other side, making healthy food cheaper?
Subsidies, yes. Supporting healthy options like fruits and vegetables. There's evidence this can work too, particularly where demand is more elastic, meaning people are more responsive to price changes for those items. Combining taxes and subsidies, the stick and the carrot, can be quite effective.
Right. So labels plus fiscal measures. What else? You mentioned other types of labels earlier, not just the nutritional warnings.
Yes. Voluntary labels. Things like organic or fair trade or maybe animal welfare certifications.
How do they fit in?
Well, they address different kinds of information gaps. They're less about immediate health warnings and more focused on, say, production methods, sustainability, or ethical considerations. Consumers might use these to align purchases with their values.
And can governments play a role there too, even if the labels are voluntary?
They can. Governments can help by setting clear standards for what these certifications actually mean, ensuring credibility. They can also promote certified products through things like public procurement, buying certified food for schools or hospitals, or including them in educational campaigns. It adds legitimacy.
Okay, this is all fascinating. Let's bring it back specifically to, the food engineering students listening. Why is digging into all this detail about labeling so crucial for their future careers?
Well, think about it. As future food scientists, food engineers, you're going to be involved in everything from developing new products, figuring out processing, maybe even advising on marketing or getting involved in policy discussions down the line.
Right, they'll be shaping the food itself.
Exactly. So understanding how something like front-of-package labeling works, how it influences consumer choices, how it interacts with formulation, how it connects to these bigger public health goals, it's absolutely essential.
So they need to design products with the labeling context in mind.
Precisely. How will this product look under the current or potential future labeling regulations? How can we formulate it to be healthier? And how do we communicate its benefits clearly and honestly, potentially using these very labels? It's part of the design thinking.
Okay, that really clarifies the relevance. So let's try and summarize the main takeaway here.
I'd say the key insight is that front-of-package labeling is a really significant tool. It can genuinely help guide consumer choices and start to address some of those hidden health and maybe even environmental costs linked to food.
But crucially, it's most powerful when it's not acting alone.
Absolutely. It works best as part of a broader, multi-pronged strategy, combining it with education, maybe fiscal measures, school policies, support for voluntary standards, the whole package.
A comprehensive approach.
Yes, it's a vital piece in the complex puzzle of promoting healthier diets and building a more sustainable food system overall.
Right. Okay, so here's a final thought for all of you listening, especially future food engineers. Really consider the ethical responsibility you'll carry. You'll be involved in designing food and also in how information about that food is communicated.
That's a great point.
How can you use your scientific knowledge, your understanding of processing and ingredients to contribute to food labeling systems that are more effective, more transparent, and that genuinely empower people to make healthier decisions for themselves and their families?
Yeah, how can you be part of the solution?
It's a really crucial area to think about as you move forward in your careers.
Yeah.
Something to really mull over. Thanks for exploring this deep dive with us today.